بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. It gives me great pleasure to be with you during the last 10 days of Ramadan, sharing with you a bit of an advice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has narrated to us in the Quran, being given from one wise man to his son, Luqman al-Hakim. Luqman is one of the very few people that the Quran mentions and talks about by name when he is not a prophet of Allah, because of his wisdom, because of the kind of life he led. And Luqman was talking to his son, giving him maw'idah or giving him nasiha. And the Quran starts out by talking about إِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ. And so the first thing that strikes us is that beautiful, loving language that he is using with his son. He was not harsh with him. He was not abrupt with him. Rather, he used the most beloved way a father can call his son. He calls him Ya Bunay. And it is something that alerts us to the etiquette of nasiha, of knowing how to give nasiha, when to give nasiha. And Luqman, in this ayat, beautiful ayat that I advise all of you to go through them and read them, imparts some of the most beautiful instructions and the most beautiful advice to his son. I wanted to highlight two of the advices and I leave you to read the rest of it. The first is Luqman alerting his son to the vast knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the fact that there's nothing that escapes him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, Ya bunayya innaha in taku mithqala habbatin min khardalin فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأتي بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير. He tells him, son, if it is a mustard seed and it is in a rock, be it on this earth or in heavens, Allah will bring it back. Imagine that. Imagine one living their life with that knowledge of Allah being infinite and having the infinite knowledge and infinite ability. So the ayat points out to two things. Not only Allah will know, even if it's a mustard seed, will know where it is. That's only part of it. He also is capable of retrieving it. As if Luqman is alerting his son that you cannot run away from Allah, but to Him. You cannot hide from Allah. You cannot do something and think somehow that it's going to escape the knowledge or the power of Allah. And this is a very powerful knowledge to have. In fact, if a person just takes that one instruction and live by it, it will change their lives to the better. It will make them a model person. Imagine every time you are tempted to do something wrong, you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it. And if you try to hide something, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of finding out about it and finding it and retrieving it. And so that's why Luqman imparted that instruction on his son, that nasiha. The second advice that sticks in my mind that Luqman has given his son is when he tells him, وَلَا تُصَعَّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. He tells him, do not turn your cheek in arrogance and do not walk on earth in arrogance, for Allah does not love those who show off. That advice strikes me because in our human interaction as Muslims, as humans, but definitely as Muslims, many times with our own attitude we cause people to turn away from our faith. People do not like someone who treats them with arrogance. People do not like someone who acts better than they. And if you are a Muslim and you are a practicing Muslim and you display that attitude, you are almost turning people away, as if you are telling people, you see what I do? Don't follow it because I'm not a good person. For fear of that, Luqman asks his son to be humble in dealing with people, to be humble in treating others, to be kind, not to be arrogant, not to be arrogant in his attitude, where he says, do not turn your cheek in arrogance, nor in his mannerism and in his actions, when he says, do not walk with arrogance. And it is very important for us as Muslims to remember that. To remember, first, the value of nasiha in our religion. Second, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mindful of all things, capable of retrieving all things, and finally, to be mindful of being humble and not to be arrogant. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.